What's up everyone, Vu of Vu Films, and I am back with another idiotic video for you to watch. And today I'm going to be talking about the Sigma 65mm f2 DG DN stands for D's Nuts lens versus the 55mm f1.8. Yes, I already posted like this comparison video on my YouTube shorts, but there's really no explanation. I showed some shots and kind of let you guys decide for yourself. And plus YouTube Shorts is a pretty low quality type of video, so you can't even tell what is sharp or what is not. So I'm gonna try to make this longer video to help explain it better. With that being said, here is the 65mm DN stands for D's Nuts lens for the Sony E-mount system, and I just want to be more specific with that, just in case there's you guys out there that unfortunately are shooting L-mount, which is likely Panasonic, and likely you're still trying to figure out how to autofocus your camera. With that being said, here is the 65 DN stands for D's Nuts, and I already talked about this, but hey, look guys, this is an amazing lens. Great quality, great build. You can see all the features and all that stuff on other reviews too. So in terms of build quality and everything, this thing is fantastic. And here again is the 55mm f1.8 lens from Sony. So I'm not gonna sit here and take pictures of bricks and take pictures of charts to show you guys sharpness, distortion, vignetting, because all that stuff could be adjusted in camera or even like in post. And in my use, I've owned the 55mm f1.8 for a very, very long time now. I ended up picking this one over the 50mm f1.4 Zeiss that I also used to own, simply because of the size. And the 50mm f1.4 is a very like unwieldy, big, massive, girthy piece of junk to carry around all day. Thankfully, as an Asian person, I am not used to that. So anyway, when I look at the quality of the image out of these two lenses, the 55 and the 65mm lenses, you can't go wrong with either. And you know, that sounds like such a cop-out thing to say, but the reality is, if you're just looking at quality of the image, they're both great, okay? Both have really nice bokeh, both autofocus super fast. And the Sigma, you know, operates as if it's a Sony lens. It's, you know, as native as Sony lenses you could possibly get. So there's no issues with that. It really just comes down to the focal length, right? I'm currently showing you the 65mm sample videos and photos that I have been able to take with this. I'm probably not going to show you any 55mm examples, because the reality is you're probably not going to be able to tell which is which. If I showed you, you're not going to be able to like sit there and nitpick sharpness or whatever regardless. So I just have to tell you from experience of an owner of multiple Sony lenses, as well as the two lenses I'm talking about right now, boils down to what lenses you use most often. I feel like if you want a very standard focal length prime lens and you could only have one of them, you should get the 55mm f1.8, because right now it is the best 50mm-ish range lens. There's new ones coming out from Viltrox and stuff like that, but for the price, this is probably the best one. I mean, the best one is probably the Zeiss 50mm f1.4, right? But that thing is massive and it is also more expensive. So under $1,000, this would be the best choice for you. Overall, like I said, you could get cheaper ones, right? But this is the best 55 standard focal length lens you can get. The 65, although it is a close competitor to the 55, it is not a standard like middle range focal length. It's probably pushing more towards telephoto. It's a nice hybrid between a 50 and an 85. Quite literally, 65mm is exactly that, right? So if you're looking for just 50 or 55 for Sony, and that's the one prime lens you get the 55. I think that's fair to say. Now, if you're someone like me, right? I like to shoot 35mm and I like to shoot 85mm. And if I could, I don't mind shooting 50mm either. However, as much as I love the 35mm range, I sometimes want a little more telephoto, right? So that at that point, 50mm is way too close to 35. I like to go to 85. In a lot of situations though, what happens is in some things that I shoot. So one of my big things is wedding films, right? Other types of portraiture. You get into tight spaces, and when you're in tight spaces, 85 is too tight. And then when you go back to 50, things look nice, but it looks a little bit too regular, right? So if you want a more telephoto, a more compressed look, that is when you could go for the 65. So if I feel like if you have a 35 millimeter, and that's like your very preferred focal length, you want to go a little bit further, you want a little more telephoto to pair with your 35, this 65 would be a great choice. I think maybe that's why Sigma did a 35 f2 and a 65 f2, because it's a good like combo of two lenses to have versus like a 50. Versus having a 35 and 50, you know, probably if you have a 35, it is pretty close to a 50 millimeter. So maybe that's why they did that. But again, nothing really beats that 85 millimeter compression as like for portraits and stuff. So that should always be in your kit, some type of 85 millimeter lens. With that being said, I think the 65 millimeter makes more sense for me than the 55 millimeter f1.8 at this time. The other one that I have compared this with was the larger D's Nuts lens, which is the 24-70 f2.8. DN stands for D's Nuts lens, and that is always the lens I always tell everyone to try to get. If they're gonna just need one lens for their E-mount system, definitely get the 24-70. DN stands for D's Nuts Sigma. Now, why would me, in my right mind, own a 24-70 that has a 65 millimeter within it and also get a 65? Well, one is obvious, the size, and the other is the f2. And a lot of you guys were like, you know, f2.8 full frame, that's plenty of bokeh. It's true if you are relatively close to your subject, right? So as you can see, there's a 24 millimeter f1.4 lens that I'm using right now, and if I get closer, obviously you get more and more compression, you get more bokeh in the background. That's, you know, general, everyone knows that, right? So the thing is, the beauty about having wider aperture lenses, f1.8, f2, f1.4, f9.5, you can be further away and still have very good separation from the background. What I found working with an f2.8 is that when I'm trying to get like these certain more storytelling, you know, I don't know how to explain it. I never went to film school, but if you want these more composed, medium to longer range shots, like wider angle shots without using a wide angle lens and still have nice compression, nice bokeh, nice separation of the subject from the background, that is when the f2.8 is not enough, in my opinion, where there is not enough bokeh, there's not enough separation in my taste to do those longer range, distanced, composed, wide angle shots of subjects, okay? And that's where lenses like the 65 f2 comes to play. That's where 85 f1.4 comes into play. And even, you know, when you're shooting at 35 at f1.8, you know, you can still get very decent bokeh even though you're further away from the subject. And not to mention the fact that you get more light for low light situations. And of course, people will say the Sony a7S III is the low light king, but let's be real here. You always rather have better noise control and better dynamic range from using the lowest ISO possible. And a lot of times with the f1.8, you don't have to leave like that 2500, 3200 ISO to go up to 12,800. You could actually stay in a very good ISO range on your Sony a7S III with a faster lens. So overall, you get a better quality image. But for me, mainly the way I shoot, the compositions I try to create, the stories I try to tell, I like to be able to get really good subject separation from more distanced shots, and f2.8 doesn't do that for me. This is a fantastic lens. It could do the job all the time. If I had to have one lens in a kit to do everything, this will be it. But because, you know, I do get in situations, documentaries, corporate work, weddings, where I can kind of be selective in certain situations of how I want my image to look. That's why I like to go to prime lenses. That's why I love prime lenses. Those of you who own prime lenses would understand what I'm coming from. So with that being said, I really hope what I'm explaining here helps you guys with like a decision if you're looking into buying a 65 millimeter f2 or like the 55 millimeter f1.8. Overall, the 65 millimeter f2 is a cheaper lens, but you can find the 55 millimeter f1.8 Sony, maybe without warranty and stuff like that, but still the legit Sony lens for close to the price of this Sigma lens. So again, if you're looking for just a medium range lens and that's the only lens you want, you need a 50 millimeter range, and I think the 55 millimeter is the best. But if you're looking for like a lens to add to your kit, like I said, if you already have a 24 millimeter f1.4, for example, GM, or if you already have a 35 and you're looking for a little more telephoto, I think the 65 would be a better choice than the 55. Also, I think this has a better close focusing distance than the 55. So there's another thing of versatility where you get a little bit more macro out of the lens. Other things, to talk about is, you have the AF MF switch. You have the aperture ring here built in. This lens is better built, okay, than the 55. The 55 is pretty bare bones. It's just a lens. So, those are things to consider. So I hope this helped you with any decisions you wanted, you were thinking about making with regards to the 65 millimeter Sigma DGDN. DN stands for D's Nuts lens. With that being said, till next time, guys, lighten up.